Three, two, one.
Hello, my name is Steve Gibson, and I'm happy to be here to give my presentation on the New York Times Edison data and the voter registration database for the 2020 general election in Washington State. My name is Steve Gibson, and again, I'm happy to be here. First off, I'd like to give a disclaimer. All the data analysis and interpretation presented here today was done by me on my own personal time. Any statements, opinions, comments made by me during this presentation or in my affidavit are my own and do not involve any other people or organization. I come here today as an interested citizen of Washington State. The data sources being used for this analysis were assumed to be accurate to the best of my ability to verify. All right, so the first question people ask typically is, what is the New York Times or what is the Edison election data? So in a nutshell, Edison research was called upon by the four major news organizations that make up the national election pool to help them with making the election results more accurate and also the predictions, but we aren't going to talk about predictions. The election data presented today was provided to me by an open web application interface that was being used by the New York Times for their 2020 general election coverage. So the data was formatted for computer application consumption. It is in a JavaScript object notation, which we call JSON. It is not easily readable by the average person, so I downloaded it. I extracted that data. I put it into Excel spreadsheet, and then I calculate the gains and losses between the events in the time series. And we're talking presidential here, not any of the other races. And they are reporting on Biden, they report on Trump, and whatever's left over would have been divvied up between the third parties. So what I downloaded for the Washington 2020 general election was recorded day by day, hour by hour, and sometimes minute by minute. And it started on November 3rd at 8:11 p.m. and it ran, the last data feed in that file ended up representing November 24th at 4:40 p.m. I counted 222 recorded events, and those would be votes uploaded, presidential votes uploaded from Washington State itself, the Secretary of State, or the county election that might have been on their websites or feeds. I haven't determined exactly how that was uploaded, but that's where the source seems to have come from. The actual vote count data and it doesn't contain any of the exit poll data because that was deemed inaccurate in the past. So this should be actually results that were reported from the election offices. And the last quote there, Edison is the most comprehensive data out there, not perfect, but best available. I'm not exactly sure where that came from, but it sounds about right. Okay. So the numbers. Between November 3rd at 8:11 p.m. until November 24th at 4:40 p.m., there were 220 recorded events, which are electronic vote count uploads. And we're talking 4,060,294 total votes. Now, the final reconciliation done by the Secretary of State was 4,087,631. So it's a little off, but it's close enough to make me feel that it is representing the data. And November 24th, there were 2,371,212 votes for Joe Biden, which represent 58.4% of the total votes cast for the presidential candidates. And for President Trump, Donald Trump, we have 1,583,515, or 39% of the votes. And the remainder were for the third-party candidates, which brings up the 2.6%, that brings it to a full 100%. So there are the numbers, and I will now talk about some of the observations that I saw in this Edison data. So the first thing I noticed, and I hope you can read the bottom graph, I realize it's a little small. At the start of the election, Trump was ahead of Biden until 8:21 p.m. on election night, November 3rd. Then it gets real interesting. Between 8:21 p.m. and 8:22 p.m., we're talking 2 minutes here, 3,101,758 votes were uploaded to Edison, and of those, they represent, of the Biden votes, they represented 81.08% of Biden's total winning votes. So you can see there was a massive amount of vote data that was sent to the Edison headquarters, which really we're talking the New York Times, but it was through Edison. So a lot of activity. And then by 8:22 p.m., we kept going a little further. There was a total of 3,117,944 votes, which are represented. So this is by the, 8:22 p.m. That represents 77% of the total votes that were cast, all the way up to November 24th. And I broke it down by the minute. 141,741 votes per minute. If you divide that from when the polls closed until 8:22, so you got 22 minutes, you divide that total. That's the fast rate that was occurring there. But it came in larger quantities, so it probably was done by a machine. Okay, and I'll talk about the next events. So this is the big picture. You can see the jump. Both President Trump and Joseph Biden had a jump on, we call it Series 7 out of the 222, which occurred at 8:22 p.m. as I stated before. So you can see it graphically on here. And then after that, it was pretty consistent, both of them growing. I did not include the third-party votes on here. It was so small, it didn't really contribute much to it. But it is very consistent. Okay, so the other thing I noticed here, where there were 10 instances of removing votes from the third-party candidates. So that's a total of 37,040 votes. And they appear to be correlated to the big jumps of votes given to Biden during the same event, or within event of that removing the votes. So that's, to me, seemed a little unusual. And like everyone else, we can watch TV and we see the other contested states, they had similar negative votes occurring in the third party. It's really odd. So anyways, I looked deeper and I saw one. It was 1-to-1. It was a definite vote flip from the third party to Biden on November 3rd, election day at 8:54 p.m. A total of 6,614 votes. And if you look on that chart right on the bottom, you'll see, it's kind of hard with the pink there, but under, you'll see other gain and loss. You'll see a minus 6,614, and if you look to the green under Biden gain and loss to see a positive 6,614. So definite vote flip there. Why was it vote flipped? I don't know, but it's definitely there. And then I observed there was 6 instances of removing votes from the Biden gain and loss, or if you want to count the votes, but it's a gain and loss, it's a net. And it was a total of 8,782 votes. But again, if you kind of look around near those events, you'll kind of see, that they correlated within an event or two of big jumps given to the third party. So that was kind of interesting. So in my mind, I don't understand why you would have negative count differences between the events. It would seem like you would always have them go in the positive as they're tallying new votes. So the negative aspect, it just doesn't make any sense. It seems to be, is that a correction at some point, or? So that's just an observation I made, and I can't exactly explain it, but to me, it feels like there should be a little bit of a more detailed research into that. And then the other thing I was going to make note of here is that I did not see any instances of negative vote gains or losses coming from the President Trump side. So there was like no adjustments on under his counts. So, all right. And then the last thing I was going to note on this Edison data is at the end of the day on the 3rd, election day, and the feed ends at 10:15 p.m. I guess that's when they stop updating their votes. I compared the total numbers against the vote counts that the counties produced at their end of day reconciliation, which I believe is the same report that they use to update their websites if the county has a website, which I believe they will. Yeah, there is not a whole lot of vote differences, but I think there's around, let me check. I think there's around 16,000 votes difference. But anyways, again, it's a small amount. It doesn't indicate that this data does not match the state election data. It just tells me that it's not exactly 1-to-1, but it's not significant enough to say that it is not representing the state data. So it's just a little bit of a sanity check on the data. Okay. All right. I'm going to jump into the voter registration database. I believe there's going to be other people talking about this, so I won't talk too much. But anybody in the public can request extract of the voter registration database being used in the state of Washington. And in, I believe it was 2006, it says on there, in 2006, the state went to a central voter registration database before they had one for each county, I believe. But in 2006, they consolidated all their data into a single database. And the data that you can request from the Secretary of State, they've scrubbed, confidential data, which would be Social Security numbers, and if they were names that had to be hidden, they would be hidden. But anyways, I downloaded a couple sets of those. There's over 5 million records in each one, so it's quite a lengthy data extract, and then I load it into my own server. And then I run queries on it. But what's interesting on it is, one thing you got to keep in mind is, by law, RCW 29A.08, if you go look at that, you'll look at all the aspects of how to maintain this voter registration database, how to identify all aspects of the election, basically. But for the most part, I would say that they go to great lengths to get people registered in the database, and they go to great lengths to keep them in the database. So, and if you look at the bottom of what I posted there, man, I got this off the Secretary of State website. What they're supposed to do a monthly removal of deceased. Now, I don't have access to the death file, master death file, but other people have looked at that and compared and came to their own conclusions. So what I'm going to talk about is just some more observations that I think might point to justify a deeper dive into this data. Okay. So I say possible irregularities because I can't say for 100% certainty that these aren't legitimate. But I took two data sets extracts, the November 2nd and the December 1st, which is the last one. So the November 2nd one would have been the one used, and they only created a snapshot of this like the 1st or 2nd of each month. So if election was November 3rd, this was a snapshot the day before. So this one would have been more or less the one used to send out the ballots. Okay, and then the December 1st one would have had probably some ballot cure where the registration might have been off or whatever, and they try to cure that. So you might have some differences there. So, well, first I did is look, well, how many over 100-year-old active voters? Now, active are I don't want to digress, but you have active and you have inactive and you have canceled. Active means they have gotten no indication, meaning they haven't been told that you no longer live there. They haven't been notified by address change or name change, or they haven't detected that you have passed away or someone you know has passed away at that address. So they will stay active unless something tells them otherwise. And if you move away and they send you a correspondence, or if they get the ballot sent back to them, that would make it go to inactive. And it will stay inactive. It will stay inactive for up to 2 consecutive federal general elections. Okay, so with that in mind, I looked at how many people are over 100 years old that are still active on the voter registration database. And out of the November one, I got 12,631 active voters over 100 years old. And it went down a little bit in the December 1st data set to 11,900. But that still seems pretty, I suppose we have healthy people living in Washington, but that's not the national average, I don't think. Next thing is ballots accepted by a 100-year-old or older person. So these are the ones, okay, so you can be active, but if you don't vote, your ballot doesn't get accepted. So these are the ones that actually were accepted during the November 3rd general election here in Washington. So we had 6,997 folks, centurions, I guess, and we had 6,950. So it dropped slightly. So I'm not sure why. So either they fixed some people's birthdays, or I'm not sure what happened there, why it dropped, because these are ballots accepted. So through part of their reconciliation and certification, there were some adjustments. Okay, then I decided to go up 10 years. So these are folks 110 years or older. So it drops off quite a bit there. So you got 18 from the November and 17 in the December ERDB. And then I said, well, let's try 120 or older. Believe it or not, you have 5. And it didn't change. And then they actually accepted 3 of those voters' ballots. So kudos to them if they truly are 120 years old or greater. There also are some with invalid birth dates. I saw some birth years in the 1870s, so I don't think that's. I'm not sure why they were never caught and removed. I've seen some with year one. I just don't understand. You know, I guess we'll leave it to the Secretary of State to answer that one. And there actually were 7 ballots that were accepted with invalid birth dates, so that's even interesting itself. I was going to talk about. There we go. Just before I came on line here, I actually ran a query out of the December 1st voter registration database, and I searched for inactive voters. Okay, so they've been like I said, they get inactive usually is when they try to correspond with you or they had a mailing returned them. So if the ballot was sent and it was returned back to them. And my understanding is recently I heard that they'll try to forward your ballot even if you have a change of address. Okay, so you're inactive and you haven't voted since before the 2016 general election. So that's exactly 2 federal general elections ago. And I came up with 196,342 inactive voters in the database that haven't voted in the general election since 2016. Okay. So I don't know when they were inactivated. They don't give that information. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they just recently got a return letter. So then I did a query inactive voters, but this time I went back to before the 2012 general election. Okay, that's 3 general elections ago. And I still came up with 159,046 voters. So that's still a sizable number of voters that, they haven't been removed from the database. And it just is really kind of makes me think that there isn't a lot of effort put into scrubbing this database. And I think it's a big disservice. A big disservice to registered voters here who do actively vote. I feel disenfranchised when I wonder if there's a lot of illegal votes in there, and I think our Secretary of State should be cleaning that database on a regular basis. She may say that she's doing it, but I mean, I'm looking at the data and it does not look like it's being cleaned on a regular basis to me. So as a citizen of Washington State, I feel we deserve more. I feel we deserve a better effort at keeping these voter rolls clean. Okay, next topic. So a couple other queries I ran, and then I think I'm near the end here. So I looked at another situation, which is active voters sharing the same address, and I put it at 10 or more. Okay, and it looks like it was averaging around 50 if you take the total number and divide by the number of addresses that have multiple tenants. Now, and I put in there, usually the address is without a unit or apartment number. So that's why I believe a lot of these are probably tenant or transitive housing. Now, the state law, I quote it there, 29A.08.112 allows registration addresses of non-traditional residences. Okay, so they right there, they say, yeah, we don't care. You can be there. The rule is you have to be in state 30 days. As long as you can prove you've been in state 30 days, you're a legal resident to vote here. And then we really don't care where you live. You can live in a house and come in and out, So I found 3,661 out of November, and it went down a little bit, 3,239. These are active voters, okay? And then I picked one address that's definitely the same address of a men's transitive housing building. We're talking a 79 unit transitive housing building. Okay, so you can only have 79 people there at a time. I also know right behind this building is a tent encampment, and probably all around the building on the sidewalks they're probably sleeping. But regardless, anyways, I was shocked to see that there was 595, and these are active. Actually, I have better numbers than that. Excuse me. There we go. So 595 in the November 2nd database and 604 in the December 1st. So interestingly enough, they gained some voters there. And these are just the active ones, okay? I also counted of the December 626 inactive. Now, again, like I said, inactive, they will stay in that database inactive indefinitely until, well, not indefinitely, but they will stay in there at least for 2 consecutive federal elections. But as I just told you in the previous screen, it doesn't seem to go away even if they do miss it. So I think we're all being fooled, to be frank. I think we're being told one thing, and what's being done is a totally separate thing. And if you look at that RCW 29A.08, it's very easy to register in Washington State. Very easy. There's really no solid checks. There's no citizenship checks. It's just, now they got automatic registration. If you go get a driver's license, you get automatic registration. If you get benefits, some kind of state benefit, they give you a chance to register, or they automatically register you. So they go all the way to try and get everybody to vote, but then they don't have any of the controls in there to weed out, duplicate names, which I'm going to talk next, and people that just really should not be allowed to vote. And it's the laws has watered down the whole process, in my opinion. Okay, the next thing is the duplicate names. Now, I actually pulled this up. I don't want to really show my list because it has people's names and addresses, and I don't want to give that away, but anybody that can download the database can find it. So basically what I did there is I ran a query and said, give me everyone whose name's the same, okay? And I also include their birth date. So believe it or not, there's quite a few names that, the duplicate, and this is for the whole state, that exceed 50 people with the same name. And these are not necessarily easy names. Some of them are cultural names, and maybe in some cultures they tend to use the similar names. I don't know, but there was a few where they had the exact same birth date but a different address, and they're both active, and they were both accepted at the ballot. So that might need to be delved into a little deeper to see what's going on there. And I think these counties owe it to the voters to spend more time on scrubbing these databases, because I believe Kim Wyman, our Secretary of State, has repeatedly stated that the counties are responsible for weeding out these problem voter registrations. As a voter, I don't care who does it. I just like to see it get done. And I'm going to continue to monitor these registration databases and see how they progress. And I hope other people out there will do the same thing, and will also bring to attention these discrepancies in the voter registration database. Okay. I think, let's see if I got any more slides here. No slides? Could someone switch to the next slide? Oh, that's the end. And since this is a recording, nobody's going to ask me any questions. So all I can do is thank you for listening to me. Again, this is done on my own time, my own equipment, my own data that I requested from public sources. Okay, so I'm just a concerned citizen, and I just want to ask questions. So I thank you for your time and listening to me, and hopefully something good will come out of this. Thank you. How's that, Bill? Looks like it's still recording, and you're muted still.
Oh, the recording should be done.
Okay, because it says you're recording. Okay. Did it sound okay? Did I not stumble too much?
Yeah, you sounded great. There was one time the thing got a little bit of underwater, but it's probably from an internet connection.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
I mean, if you want me to redo any particular part, I could.
No, I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it looks like you had my older presentation.
Oh, did it?
That's fine, because I only did, I put some more screenshots in there and I added some more data, but that's okay. I think this is long enough, personally. I think they get the, and if you get Russ, I don't know if you got Russ or not.